Hi, fourth grade. I hope you're having a good day. So you've been reading Number the Stars, and yesterday you were working on character traits. Today, when readers read historical fiction, we want to remember that the times were different then, so we want to look at the ways that the characters act and feel. They're shaped by the times. So today, I'm going to teach you that characters' feelings and decisions are influenced by the world and their role in the world. And when our characters act differently than how we would respond, we want to ask ourselves why. So if we think back to what's been happening in Number of the Stars so far, in our first chapter, Ellen and Anne-Marie and Kirsty, they were running down the street and the German soldiers yelled halt to them, and Anne-Marie was super frightened. And I was thinking, why is she super frightened? Because if I were walking or running on the street and a police officer told me to stop running, I wouldn't think it was a huge deal, right? I would just stop running. But during these times, there's officers on every corner, and these police officers, they have huge guns that they're carrying, and it even said that this officer had cold eyes. So we want to think about during this time, this is when the Nazi soldiers were starting to come into Germany, and that was affecting how Anne-Marie and Ellen were responding. So Anne-Marie's friend Ellen is Jewish, and we know that the Germans don't like Jewish people. So that's affecting how Anne-Marie responds to this situation that would be different than how we would respond to it. Okay. Another example is that as we continue reading, when the girls, they come home and they tell Mrs. Rosen and Anne-Marie's mother about what happened, Mrs. Rosen is extremely frightened. So again, we want to pay attention to how the different characters respond in different ways. So really think about it. How does Kirsty respond to the situation compared to Mrs. Rosen, and why do they respond differently? So when you're doing this, think about their religion and the age and their knowledge in the world. We want to think about those things when we look at how characters respond to the things that are happening around them. So as I reread this part, I want you to be thinking alongside of me of why does Kirsty and Mrs. Rosen respond differently to the same event that is happening to both of them. So if we think back, so the girls again are telling the moms what happened to them on the street. So it said, I must go and speak to Ellen, Mrs. Rosen said, moving toward the door. You girls walk a different way to school tomorrow. Promise me, Anne-Marie, and Ellen will promise too. We will, Mrs. Rosen, but what does it matter? There are German soldiers on every corner. They will remember your faces, Mrs. Rosen said, turning in the doorway to the hall. It is important to be one of the crowd always. Be one of many. Be sure that they never have reason to remember your face. She disappeared into the hall and closed the door behind her. He'll remember my face, Mama, Kirsty announced happily, because he said I look like his little girl. He said I was pretty. If he is such a pretty little girl, why doesn't he go back to her like a good father? Mrs. Johansson murmured, stroking Kirsty's cheek. Why doesn't he go back to his own country? So again, think about what do you notice about Kirsty's response, and how is it different than Mrs. Rosen's, and why is there a difference? So again, you want to think about what influences each of them. So think about their age, their religion, their roles, their knowledge of world events. So again, perhaps Mrs. Rosen has more reason to be fearful than Anne-Marie and Kirsty. She has more reason to be fearful because she knows what's happening in the world around her, and also she's Jewish. So these events could affect her more than Anne-Marie's family because they're Jewish, so they could be taken away or something bad could happen to them. Again, if we think about Kirsty, she's really young. Does she know what's going on? I don't think so, right? So she is happy that this soldier remembers her face and calls her pretty, But again, when this is going on, you don't want anyone to remember you because you don't want anything bad to happen to you or your friend's family, which is Jewish. So that's why Mrs. Rosen is more frightened and telling them to go a different way, where Kirsty and Anne Marie are thinking, why? Why do we have to go a different way when there's German soldiers everywhere? So again, to help me figure that out, I thought about the characters' ages, their roles, their religion, and their knowledge of world events. So again, Mrs. Rosen and Ellen's mom, or Mrs. Rosen and Anne Marie's mom, both know what's going on, so they respond differently, right? Whereas, your parents might be responding differently to what's going on in the world right now, where you're not. So, again, you want to ask, why is that character responding differently? So today, your job is going to be to look at the characters in your stories and the historical events that are happening, and look at how does your character react to something important in the story, and ask yourself, why is the character reacting that way? So think about their role, their religion, their age, to help you respond to that question. So again, do that in the same Google Doc that you've been answering all your reading prompts. So not a new Google Doc. I hope you have a good day, and if you have any questions, you can write it in your Google Doc or you can email your teacher. Bye!